The night of November 12, 2025, was draped in a thick, cold fog that clung to the scarred landscapes near Vula. It was the kind of damp, vision-stealing mist that muffled sound and turned familiar terrain into a labyrinth of shadows. At 4:18 a.m., in the hushed quiet of a forward observation post, a Ukrainian drone operator with the 53rd Recon Battalion noticed something strange. On his thermal imaging screen, a faint line of heat signatures was crawling through the gloom. It was a phantom presence, moving where no friendly forces should have been. A slow, deliberate procession that betrayed its immense weight and dangerous purpose. The operator watched, his heart rate quickening as the line grew longer, resolving into the distinct shapes of heavy military vehicles. This was no ordinary patrol. The convoy stretched for over a kilometre, a mechanical serpent winding its way through the Ukrainian countryside under the cover of darkness and foul weather. It was moving at a sluggish 12 miles per hour, a pace that suggested its cargo was not only heavy, but also dangerously volatile. The operators quickly identified the silhouettes of T-72B3 and the more advanced T-90M Proiv tanks, their engines radiating a dull heat into the cold air. Behind them followed a train of BMP-3 infantry carriers, packed with soldiers, and a series of large, ominous fuel tankers. This was a complete, self-contained invasion force on the move, a dagger aimed at Ukraine's heart while the world slept. The atmosphere in the Ukrainian command bunker became electric with tension. Every update from the field painted a more alarming picture. This was a secret operation, executed with a level of stealth that suggested high stakes. The Russians were not just probing the lines, they were attempting to move a significant logistical and combat package deep behind the front. The fog that was supposed to be their shield had been pierced by Ukrainian technology, but the discovery posed a terrifying question. Where was this Ghost Convoy going, and what was it planning to do once it arrived? The silence of its advance was more menacing than the roar of any artillery barrage. The initial reconnaissance reports were chilling. The column consisted of 32 vehicles in total. 14 were modern main battle tanks, supported by 6 infantry fighting vehicles carrying nearly 200 mechanized troops. But it was the logistical tale that caused the most alarm. 10 massive fuel trucks and 6 dedicated fuel carriers. This was not a force designed for a quick raid. It was carrying enough fuel, ammunition and personnel to sustain a major offensive, to create a new and bleeding wound in Ukrainian territory. The convoy was a self-sufficient engine of war, inching its way toward an unknown destination, its very existence a declaration of Russia's hidden, and perhaps more dangerous, long-term ambitions. The mystery of the convoy's destination did not last long. Cross-referencing the column's trajectory with intercepted intelligence, Ukrainian commanders uncovered a horrifying truth. The target was a newly constructed and completely illegal Russian military base hidden deep within the Yampil forest, a full 7 miles inside sovereign Ukrainian territory. This was not just an outpost, it was a fortress in the making. Satellite imagery and signals intelligence revealed a sprawling complex designed to store over 400 tons of ammunition, including stocks of devastating thermobaric warheads and vast quantities of fuel. Russia was secretly building a launch pad for a new and terrible phase of the war right under their noses. The strategic implications were catastrophic. If this secret base became operational, it would fundamentally reshape the battlefield. Military analysts projected that Russia's strike capacity in eastern Ukraine could increase by an astonishing 300%. The base was designed to supply 3 full Russian battalions for a month of sustained, high-intensity combat. It was a logistical key intended to unlock a new offensive corridor, a direct route toward the cities of central Ukraine that had so far remained beyond the Kremlin's immediate reach. The convoy was not just carrying supplies, it was carrying the potential for a renewed assault on a massive scale, an escalation that could threaten millions of lives. The lives of between 1.8 and 4.5 million civilians hung in the balance. The cities within the new projected strike range were home to families, schools, and hospitals, the very fabric of Ukrainian society. Allowing the convoy to reach its destination was unthinkable. It would be like allowing an arsonist to stack gasoline-soaked kindling at the foundation of your home. The base represented a long-term strategic investment by Moscow, part of a sinister network of secret depots and falsified military maps designed to deceive and overwhelm Ukrainian defenses over the next 5 years. This single convoy was the final, critical piece needed to bring that deadly vision to life. The discovery sent a shockwave through Ukraine's leadership. This was evidence of a hidden war, a shadow conflict being waged in secret, far from the daily headlines of trench warfare. The Kremlin was not merely fighting for the territory it already held. It was actively preparing for a much wider, more ambitious conquest. The Yampil forest base was a testament to this chilling strategy. It was a violation of international law, a flagrant breach of sovereignty, and a direct existential threat to the state of Ukraine. The convoy had to be stopped, and it had to be stopped now. There would be no second chance. With the convoy crawling ever closer to the Yampil forest, the Ukrainian command faced a decision of breathtaking risk. The window of opportunity was closing fast. They had to act, but their options were perilously limited. The bulk of their armoured reserves were positioned elsewhere, committed to defending other critical sectors of the front. Pulling them back would take too long and would dangerously weaken other positions. The commanders looked at the map, the red line of the enemy convoy pushing deeper into their territory. A conventional, large-scale response was impossible. They would have to gamble. The decision they made was audacious, bordering on reckless. They would stage an armoured ambush. But they would do it with a force that was, on paper, hopelessly outmatched. By 5:02 a.m., the order was given. A small, nimble force of just 12 Ukrainian tanks was dispatched to intercept the Russian behemoth. This tiny contingent consisted of Media Group, Ukrainian T-64BV tanks on standby, soldiers beside Soviet-era tanks stock and distribute equally, 8 upgraded Soviet-era T-64BV tanks, reliable and familiar to their crews, alongside 4 of the formidable German-made Leopard 2A6. 12 tanks against 32 heavily armed vehicles, including Media Group, Russian armoured convoy with tanks, heavily armed military vehicles in formation, a stock could distribute equally, 14 Russian tanks. The odds were stark, and failure was not an option. This was a classic David versus Goliath scenario, a desperate roll of the dice dictated by necessity. The Ukrainian commanders were betting everything on Media Group, Ukrainian tank crews preparing for battle, close-up of experienced soldiers, stock and distribute equally, the skill of their crews, the superiority of their tactics, and the element of surprise. They were trusting that a well-executed ambush could shatter the larger, more cumbersome enemy formation before it could effectively respond. It was a plan that required immense courage from the tank crews who were being sent into the fog to face a numerically superior enemy. They were Ukraine's last line of defense against a strategic catastrophe, a thin wall of steel and resolve against a tide of Russian armor. The immense pressure fell on the shoulders of the men inside those 12 tanks. They knew what was at stake. They were not just fighting for a patch of ground. They were fighting to prevent the opening of a new front that could lead to the devastation of entire cities. They were fighting for the lives of millions of their fellow citizens. As their tanks rumbled toward the designated ambush point near the small village of Pavka, the crews prepared their machines and their minds. They checked their ammunition, calibrated their targeting systems, and spoke in low, calm voices over their headsets. The quiet professionalism a stark contrast to the storm that was about to break. The chosen ambush site was a narrow stretch of road near Pavka, a natural bottleneck where the terrain offered the Ukrainian tanks excellent cover. Trees and small hills flanked the road, creating a perfect kill zone. The Ukrainian force arrived and took up their positions with practiced efficiency, engines silenced, their steel hulls disappearing into the pre-dawn gloom. The fog, which had aided the Russians in their stealthy advance, now became an ally for the ambushers. It concealed their positions, turning their 12 tanks into invisible predators lying in wait. The tension was palpable, a heavy silence broken only by the whisper of the wind and the crackle of encrypted radio communications. Technology became the eyes and ears of the waiting Ukrainian force. Above the fog, reconnaissance drones hovered silently, their thermal cameras locked onto the approaching Russian convoy. The live feed was relayed directly to the tank commanders, giving them a godlike view of the battlefield. They could see every vehicle in the Russian column, track its speed, and identify the most critical targets, the fuel trucks and the command vehicles. This fusion of modern drone surveillance with classic ambush tactics gave the small Ukrainian force a decisive edge. They would not be firing blindly into the mist. Every shot would be guided by precise, real-time intelligence. Inside their tanks, the crews waited. Time seemed to stretch and warp. Every minute felt like an hour. They watched the drone feed, their fingers resting near their firing controls. The first heat signatures of the Russian convoy appeared on their screens, growing larger and more distinct as the column lumbered toward the trap. The lead T-90M tank entered the kill zone, its crew oblivious to the 12 cannons aimed at them. The Ukrainian commander's voice came over the radio, calm and steady, ordering his units to hold their fire. Let more of them enter. Let the most valuable targets get deeper into the trap. The discipline was immense, a testament to their training and resolve. Then the order came. Fire. The night erupted. The first volley from the Ukrainian tanks was a symphony of destruction, precise and overwhelming. The Leopard 2s, with their powerful 120mm guns, targeted the lead and rear tanks, trapping the entire convoy in the kill zone. Simultaneously, the T-64s unleashed a torrent of shells into the center of the column, focusing on the fuel trucks. The effect was instantaneous and catastrophic. One fuel tanker exploded in a massive fireball, illuminating the foggy landscape in a hellish orange glow and setting off a chain reaction. The Russian convoy, a moment ago a disciplined military formation, was transformed into a chaotic inferno of burning steel and secondary explosions. The ambush at Pavka was short, brutal, and decisive. In the fiery chaos, the Russian convoy disintegrated. Trapped and disoriented, the surviving Russian vehicles became easy targets for the Ukrainian tankers, who methodically eliminated them one by one. The well-planned Russian operation, years in the making, had been shattered in mere minutes by a dozen determined tank crews. When the sun finally rose, its light filtered through the smoke to reveal a scene of total devastation. The road was a graveyard of blackened, twisted metal. The secret convoy had been stopped, its deadly cargo never reaching the hidden base in the Yampil forest. The immediate threat had been neutralized. The significance of this single engagement rippled far beyond the smoldering wreckage near Pavka. For Ukraine, it was a profound victory, a demonstration of tactical brilliance, courage, and the effective use of modern technology against a larger foe. It reaffirmed that their spirit of resistance remained unbroken, and that they could outthink and outfight the Russian military, even when outgunned. The story of the 12 tanks became an instant legend, a symbol of the nation's resilience and a powerful morale boost for soldiers and civilians alike. It proved that with smart strategies and unwavering bravery, even the most daunting threats could be overcome. For Russia, the failed operation was a humiliating and costly setback. It exposed a deep-seated strategic vulnerability, their reliance on complex, secret plans that could be unraveled by a single point of failure. The destruction of the convoy and the exposure of the Yampol base laid bare their long-term intentions for a wider war, stripping away any pretense of a limited military operation. The event sent a clear message to the Kremlin that Ukraine's intelligence and military capabilities were far more advanced than they had assumed. Their secret war was no longer secret, and their plans for the future were now compromised. Ultimately, the daring ambush in the November fog served as a stark warning to the world. It was a clear signal that the nature of the conflict was evolving. The war was increasingly being fought in the shadows, with intelligence, technology, and audacious special operations playing a role as critical as any trench battle. The incident revealed that the future of the war might not be decided by massive armies clashing on open fields, but by secret convoys, hidden bases, and the small elite units tasked with finding and destroying them. The fires at Pavka illuminated a grim truth. The line between victory and catastrophe was growing thinner, and secrets could now decide